Everybody in the room that's winning, let me hear you clap your hands. We're in town, America, the recovery community. The 810 Addiction Recovery Podcast is live with you this week again at Higher Quality Life Ministries. Before we start, I'd like to always give thanks to the pastor and the first lady for allowing me to carry out my dreams in accord with the mission of the church, which is to help people reach their full potential in God. And I bear witness that that's a fact. Today on the show is the daughter of one of my heroes, Carl Maddox. And if you watch the show, if you watched his show, then you know why I call him a hero. Because what he overcame is amazing. And today we get a chance to talk to his daughter. How you doing today, young lady?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm well.
Good.
What brought you here today?
I just wanted to have an opportunity to share my story and hope that some people can relate, especially young women that are going through addiction or trying to overcome those things in their life.
That's right. Now your dad tell me that y'all be touring or going different places, doing open talk together. Tell me about that.
We did an open talk with, what was the name of it? I can't remember the group that we did it with, but it was at Valley Church off of Lippincott. And we had an opportunity to share some of our story, and they had a lot of different speakers that night, so we didn't try to take up too much of their time, so it was like a summed up version of everything.
Mm-hmm. Y'all ever do it at any other place? That's the only place?
We're doing it at UFAM in May, I believe. We're going to be one of the main stage spotlight. They advertise it as.
So how y'all do it? Dad go first?
Well, last time he let me go first. I feel like it's set up better that way because I get to share how I grew up in it, and then he can finish off with how he has come to overcome all of those battles and show me a new way of life and a better way of life and be a better role model for me.
That's amazing. That is amazing. So tell me about how beautiful life is for you today. What are some of the things that you're doing that you may not have dreamed possible years back?
Well, I feel like I am a positive inspiration to a lot of the young women in the fellowship, and I am also a positive inspiration to my children now as well. And that's the biggest blessing of all.
That's always the biggest blessing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I experienced that too. I got one daughter who knew me as an addict, and my other two younger daughters never knew that. So sometimes they'd get together, right? And my oldest daughter be describing somebody they don't even know.
Right.
So that's amazing. But my oldest daughter, not only did she not reap the benefit that my two youngest daughters reaping, she happy that it got to that.
Right.
Like, look, you ain't the same dude that raised me.
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes I get a little bit jealous, I guess, because my children get to experience a man that I never had as a kid.
Yeah.
So it's bittersweet, though. I wouldn't say I'm jealous of it because I'm happy for them, but it's better late than never, you know what I'm saying? I'm glad I get to experience that at some point in my life.
So you quite young in recovery, right? 16 months, you say?
I recently had a relapse, and it's only been 5 months and 10 days since my most recent relapse.
Okay, how long did that last?
I think I was only out for about a week.
Oh, that means you wanted it.
So it didn't feel the same going back out knowing that I had a head full of recovery. It was like eating at me. And it wasn't, in the end of my addiction, it wasn't enjoyable. But when I came home from jail and then I relapsed again, it was much, much less enjoyable than the not enjoyable version of addiction I had prior to going to jail too.
Yeah, and you know the literature tells us that sometimes, relapse will launches into a more vigorous application of our program.
That is right. And, you know, I've been trying to get recovery since I was 17 years old, but I started out in a different fellowship, and I never felt like I felt like I could relate with them, but I couldn't identify with them, so it always led to a relapse, because I felt like I couldn't share my story the way that I wanted to. I couldn't open up to them without the fear of being judged. So my most recent relapse definitely encouraged a firm foundation on the recovery that I have now today.
And we can't discard. You don't discard those other months now, because you accomplished that.
That's right.
You did it. But you know, a lot of people don't never acknowledge that. That sometimes, I don't know if it's intimidation or just our own thought process sometimes to make us not want to share or think we can't relate. But a lot of people don't disclose that.
I know when I first relapsed, I was very ashamed, and I felt like I had failed everybody, including myself. So I didn't want to share about it, nor did I want to come into the rooms and say that I had relapsed. So after I relapsed, I did keep acting as if it didn't happen, but that only lasted a couple days before my dad found out from somebody that was on my Snapchat, and he was like, you know, you gotta go share that, right? And I was like, oh God, I don't want to. But I knew I had to in order to grow in my program, because I can't live a lie. The program is all about honesty and open-mindedness.
That's right.
So
That's why I still invited you on after you told me that. You know? Because that's a strong point of it. Because a lot of people, when they relapse, sometimes they just go bury themselves even further.
It is, I know I've had my program, my road of recovery has included a lot of relapses, and I know in the past when I relapsed, I felt too ashamed to even go back into the rooms, which led me further out into my relapse, into my addiction.
So, what have you done different this time?
Gotten into my literature and stayed connected with my recovery family.
Okay, so at some point you had pulled away prior to relapse?
I was too afraid to get out and associate, because for younger people in recovery, especially women, there's not many of us. And a lot of the older ladies that I interact with have a lot of clean time. Or, they've been in the fellowship for a while. So I was very intimidated by that in the beginning. I felt like they wouldn't accept me because, I was young and I was in recovery, and maybe they thought that I wasn't going to take it serious.
How old are you?
24. I'll be 25 in 2 weeks.
That's very insightful for a young person. You on the ball, young sister?
Yes, sir.
I like that. So, what were some of the lows in active addiction? Some of the things you're so glad today, you thank God that you don't have to do that, or live that way no more.
I was always broke. I remember nobody wanted anything to do with me, and if they did deal with me, they did it because they had to, not because they wanted to. They did it because mostly they were family, and even my family, didn't really want anything to do with me, and I didn't really want to have anything to do with them either, because I was so embarrassed that I was living the way that I was living, and I looked the way that I looked, and I was acting the way that I was acting. There were times that I would stay gone from my family and my kids for weeks because I couldn't get right even long enough to stay in the right headspace and approach them in a respectful manner.
Yeah, I get it. I remember a good friend of mine told me one time, he said, man, I'm gonna go home. He had a bunch of new stuff with him, right? I think he called me 3 days later. He had walked to Lansing. He was at a homeless shelter in Lansing, and he walked there.
Wow.
From Flint.
I had a couple of hikes back in my day, but usually for the most part, I was the one that had a vehicle a lot of the time, and there were times that got bad enough, that I was bad enough off to where I would sell my car. But I don't know, somehow I always accumulated another vehicle relatively fast. I don't remember how I did it. You know, maybe God was looking out for me back then too, but I didn't have to walk too often.
Yeah, and I was saying that because he was like, I'm going home. He's always saying, I'm going home. This is the only time he ended up in Lance, but other times he's always, man, I thought you was going home. It's a week later, he still ain't made it there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this particular night, like I said, he had went to Lance.
Mm-hmm.
So, how you deal with the struggles today?
I embrace them because without those struggles, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't see recovery the way that I see it, and I wouldn't work it the way that I work it without those struggles that I went through.
Yeah, that's a good thing, so you won't self-sabotage. You know, sometimes when we have a little discomfort,
Mm-hmm.
and it can only be temporary,
Mm-hmm.
you may be discomfort for 10 minutes, and that don't even be a thought the next day, but sometimes within them 10 minutes, we throw it away.
And I have come to the realization that if I have to experience temporary discomfort at this time in my life, that discomfort is going to help me grow in the long run. Therefore, I need to deal with it and feel everything that my body and my brain wants to feel, and my heart especially, because blocking out those emotions, it might block out your next blessing.
Girl. You sound like your dad.
I learned from the best, I think.
So what impact? All right, this I'm gonna tell you what he told me.
Okay.
He told me that you began to use to get closer to him.
I did. I feel like I wanted to feel what they were feeling. I wanted to know what was so special about what was going on with them. And I would think I was only like 11 or 12 years old, and you know, I was a very nosy kid. When my parents were on the phone, I'd be around the corner listening, or like when they were talking and their door was shut, I'd have my ear up to the door. And I recall them discussing some transactions that were going on. So I realized that there was stuff in the house, and I used to go and I'd take one or I'd take two, and I would save them up, and then I'd, you know, take them all at once. And I wanted to experience what was taking my dad away from me, I guess. I wanted to know why it was so detrimental to our relationship.
Yeah, I can get that. If it's so important, let me do it too then.
Right.
Yeah, I get it. So emotionally, can you recall how you felt emotionally when you was approaching that desire?
It was like a euphoric kind of feeling. Like I was excited because I was like, oh, I get to find out like what's going on. I get to find out what this is all about. And I don't know, maybe I wanted to be an adult. Maybe I was like trying to grow up too fast. So I don't know. It was excitement to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's true of most of us.
Mm-hmm.
I always be happy too, you know.
Yeah.
Then it started becoming a burden.
Then it became a problem.
You know, like, dang, I can't even not do it.
Right.
You know, take control. So, what did you discover about your relationship? I mean, did it lead to what you thought? I mean, I know it wasn't good in the end, but I'm just saying, at the time, did it bring y'all close?
Absolutely not. I think it took a while for him to realize what was going on. You know, I think he had ideas when it first started happening, but like I was really young, like I said, so I feel like in his head he was like, "There's no way." You know, she's only 12, she's 11. There's no way. So.
And what was you using at that time?
Pills. I don't know what they were. I used to look them up on like the Pill Finder app, and I'd look up the little numbers and everything they had, and the color and the shape, and it would tell me, and it'd be like, this is for, you know, like a muscle relaxer, this is for this is for that, and I'd be like, oh yeah, okay. And I found out very, very, very young, I think I was still 12 years old, that the muscle relaxers and skeletal relaxers and things of that nature were the ones that gave me the best feeling.
So throughout your active addiction, that's all it was pills?
Oh no, I only did the pills until I want to say I was 13, and at 13 I was me and my group of friends, we used to live on an island in North Carolina, and me and the group of friends I had, I don't remember who it was, but this one girl that I went to school with, she was like, hey, this guy lives right across the street from me, he's older, he said he'll buy us liquor all the time, and this guy was like 40 years old.
And how old was you?
I was 12 or 13.
Oh, Lord.
And he had, it was all of us. Our age ranges were like 12 to like 16 years old. And we were going there every day, drinking and smoking and partying. And I remember one day in specific, we were all over there, and this group of older guys, they were a couple grades above me, they were all in the bedroom. And then they opened the door and they were like, hey, Carly, you want to try this? And it was cocaine. And that began my addiction with cocaine. And then I moved back to Flint a couple of years later. I had my daughter at 16. And prior to all of this, I was on probation at 13, 14. I was on probation for B&E. And I did about 2 years on probation. And I tried to clean up my act, but I kept smoking weed. And I kept dropping dirty for weed. So it was a lot longer process than what it needed to be. And then when I was 16, I found I was pregnant with my daughter, my oldest. And I did smoke weed while I was pregnant with her, but my morning sickness was so horrible that I couldn't eat, I couldn't do anything. I was sick all throughout the day. So, I'd hit a joint a couple times so I would be able to eat and, function. And I was still in school. So, I had to be able to get through the school day without being, very sick. And when I was 17, I moved back to Flint, and I met my first boyfriend here, and his sister was an addict, and we didn't know this at the time, but I remember one day we were in her car, we went with her to somebody's house, and we parked, and she was like, I'm gonna hit this a couple times, and it was crack.
Oh.
And she did it a couple times. He was like, hey, let me try it, and he tried it. And I knew it was a very bad thing. I was 17. I was scared of it. I was like, there's no way I'm doing that. And we sat in the car for probably 45 minutes to an hour while they were peer pressuring me, hit it, just hit it, come on, hit it. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. And finally I gave in because I'm a people pleaser. And I hit it, and it was off to the races. And from 17 to 19, I was addicted to that. And then COVID hit, and crack cocaine got wildly expensive, outrageously expensive. And my dealer at the time was like, I got this other stuff. It's really cheap, and it was methamphetamines at that point. Mm-hmm. So I did that from about 19 to, I think I only did that for about a year and a half. Well, no, I was 18. So from 18 to 22, I was still dabbling with it, but I was trying to get clean really bad, so I wasn't really doing it. So from 19 to 22, that was methamphetamines and crack for me.
Now, let me replay some of this, man. I'm kind of shocked.
I know.
So you telling me the 13-year-old young lady, that some old man introduced you to cocaine?
Yes, sir.
I thank God I wasn't that rotten. I mean, I ain't about to get no kid.
And I never seen a problem with it, now I do. Now I know that that's some predator type stuff like that is crazy. And if I ever found out that my 13-year-old daughter was going over to some 40-year-old man's house and drinking every day, and it was strictly drugs and alcohol, there was no weird funky stuff going on, you know what I'm saying? And he was he explained it to us like this. He was like, I just want you guys to have a safe place to party. And a lot of the time, he wouldn't even be there. He would be at his ex-wife's, or he would be with his daughter or wife, whatever it might have been. And other times when he was there, he was so drunk that he was passed out in his room. And we knew that room was off limits. Nobody ever went in that room. He had a spare bedroom that we used, the living room, the kitchen, and then he had a enclosed porch area.
I still can't let him off the hook for that.
I I know.
Now, the crack thing, they was older than you too?
No, we were, I was 17, my boyfriend at the time was 16, and his sister was 19.
Okay, so that was like a peer thing.
Yeah.
Buddies trying something new.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So tell me this. When you was coming, what made you, like, I gotta do something else. This gotta stop.
Mm-hmm.
Was it dad?
No. I wish it would have been. But, you know, like I said, I tried multiple times to get into recovery from the age of 17. And I had my daughter, and, you know, I was going through this addiction with my daughter. I had her full time. Her dad's in her life, but he doesn't live in the state.
Mm-hmm.
So I had her full time, and at this age, she wasn't in school yet. And then she had just started going to school around the time that I tried getting clean, and that was because I kept taking her to school, and I was off of binges, and I was high out of my mind, and she would want me to walk her to school because she's in kindergarten, and I couldn't do it. I could not, like, muster up the courage to go inside that school because I felt so guilty about my state of mind. So I really wanted to do it for my daughter, and I kept failing. And in the end, I knew that I couldn't do it for anybody other than myself, and I had to be ready to get clean and do better for myself, and then secondly for my children. And that makes me feel bad, but I have to put myself first in this program of recovery, otherwise it's not going to work. If you do it for your kids or your parents or your spouse, it's not going to work, you know. So I knew I wanted a better way of life.
That's right. Because when we think we're doing something for somebody else, what do we do when we get disappointed by that individual? See, now, all right, I done it for you, and you don't even like me no more.
Right.
You know, so you can easily be like, all right, what the hell?
Mm-hmm.
That's why it got to be done for us, because no matter what circumstance we face outside, hey, I'm committed to this.
Right. And then I also got pregnant with my second born, my son, when I was 21, in the midst of the worst time in my addiction, when I was at the worst bottom. And it should have been practically impossible for me to get pregnant at this time. I was not taking care of my health. I was not taking care of my body. I was not taking care of my mind, my spirit. It was by the grace of God that I ended up pregnant. And at this time, I was in a 4-year relationship that was coming to an end. It was, I don't want to cry. It was very toxic, very horrible, very abusive. And throughout the whole pregnancy, I was abused the entire time. I was just in a very horrible headspace, and I was very unhealthy mentally because I wasn't in the right mindset, I guess. And this man, I want to say he loved me because we were together for so long, but I think he loved me for selfish reasons. I think he was there because he didn't want to be alone and he was afraid of himself.
He was an addict too.
Yes.
I know that. Yeah, that's what it be.
Mm-hmm.
It don't be love. It be obsession or possession.
Yeah, it was obsession, and he felt like I was his property in a way. Not in a way. That's what it was. And I haven't really thought much about this situation, so I don't really know how to explain all of it. But there were good times, but we were together for 4 years, and I could probably say a year in total was good. And it wasn't a full straight year. It was like 3 months here, 6 months here, a couple months here.
That's how it usually be with addict relationships anyway.
Yeah.
It ain't never all the way, especially if we running tight on the money sometimes.
Yeah.
It can get ugly.
Yes.
Get out there and get something. You get out there and get it. You know how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
So you said the very bottom, well, you described it. I can't actually describe it. But young lady, you 24. Brilliant. So what are some of your goals? What are you trying to get to in 5 years from now?
In 5
if you
years
got some 5 years
from
goals.
now, I want to have a very stable home, each of my children to have their own room, food in the house, stable income, living comfortably. I don't want to have to worry about gas or food or the basic necessities, or I don't want to have to worry about running out of shampoo and conditioner and body wash. You know, the little things in life.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want to be. I don't want to be overachieving and over exceeding everything. I don't want like the world. I just want life to be simple and not so tight.
I tell you one thing I know for sure, you got some damn good footsteps to follow.
Sure do.
That's for sure. And you already appear to be mentally set, so whatever you want to accomplish, you can. You ever thought about being a recovery coach?
I have thought about it, but I feel like I'm not far enough into my recovery in order to really make that decision yet.
Yeah, that's I'm talking about down the road.
Down the road, it's a possibility for sure. I know I want to do something helping, not adolescent kids for sure, but young women that are first discovering what life is about in love and, all the fun things that are supposed to be fun in life. I want to be able to share my experience with the toxicity and the manipulation and the narcissism, and I want to give them hope, and I want to give them things that they need to look out for and either to run towards or run away from when they get themselves in those situations.
Mm-hmm. And I asked you that question, I mentioned that because I heard you when you said it earlier. It's not a bunch of young ladies your age, in your age group that's in the room.
Right.
But we know it's a bunch of them using.
Yep. And I know when they come to the rooms, I know how I felt when I first came into the rooms. I was very discouraged, and I felt like I wouldn't be able to relate with anybody because, there wasn't very many young women around. But within staying in the rooms and staying connected, I've come to realize that the older women are the same as me. They just have lived a longer life.
Yep.
They have relatively the same stories, been through the same situations.
Yeah.
They just have more experience. They're a little more seasoned than what I am.
They've been around a little longer. That's right. But the beautiful thing that I can see about you getting clean and and utilizing your God-given skills and brain and whatever is that you got the future here. See, some of us come in late.
Yes, I have heard that quite a few times.
And I've had people in my peer groups, life skills, or even on the podcast, it's one of the things they mention, especially being in their 40s or 50s, what I'm going to do.
Right.
Because like you can, I'm gonna be a nurse. See, that still may be possible. When you're 59, that might not be, in the cards for you.
Right.
So you got a long way to go, sister.
Yes, sir.
I am impressed.
And
I can tell who daughter you is. So all that stuff I said on Facebook, I'm justified in. I'm justified. You hear the daughter?
Oh my goodness.
Sound powerful like the dad.
And I lived a lot of life in a very short time span. And it's sad because I wish I didn't have to live that way. But at the same time, I am so thankful I went through the things that I went through at such a young age because it's going to save me in the long run. And, I had both of my kids very young, so I will be able to tell them the telltale signs of what's to come with that early age.
That's right. That's one thing that's beneficial. After we get it together, is that sometimes my experiences, you don't have to experience, I'm going to tell you about them for sure. Like your dad. He said, remember, I think he told me 40 years. See, you ain't had that long of a run.
No.
He already done that.
And, I love my dad with all my heart, and I remember coming to terms, I want to say I was about 18 or 19 when I came to terms with the fact that my dad was either going to die of an overdose or die by getting killed in the streets due to his reckless behavior and addiction. And I was okay with it, you know what I'm saying? Like, I knew that was going to be his outcome in life. But now that he's clean, I and and my kids get to see him hopefully die of old age. So, you know, I'm so thankful for that.
And that's a big switch, ain't it? Ain't that
Oh
one
my
hell of a
goodness,
switch?
is it?
I can see your death coming,
Mm-hmm.
and now and then years later, now I can see you being 113. Carl Maddox, 113. Now he talked to me briefly about it, and I seen it on social media about the county jail.
Yep.
Tell me about that experience.
Well, when I was 22, I became acquainted with a male figure that I had had on my Facebook for a very, very long time. And we had communicated throughout the years, on and off. You know, we had flirted back and forth a couple of times, but it was never really serious. And like I said, I lived in a different state when I was younger. But I had family here, and I would come to visit, you know, every summer for however long until I had my daughter, I believe. And I was drinking heavily at this time. I was using cocaine at this point. I wasn't doing any of the smoking or, you know, the other things. And he got into a situation with his baby mother. And at the end of it, this was like a week-long thing, and by the end of it, he had approached me. He was staying at my house at the time, and he said, you know, just take me over here, let me go get all my stuff, you know, I'll wash my hands with her, I'm done. And I was drunk, so I was like, yeah, sure, you know, let's go, you know, F this B, you know, this, that, and third, and I drove him over there, and I should have known from the first stop that we made that his intentions were nothing but negative. We stopped at the house that he lived in with her, and he, like, kicked in the back door, and he went inside for a couple of minutes, and he came back out, and he was like, she's not here, and he was all out of breath. So I was like, okay, well, did you get your stuff? And he goes, oh, no, she's got it all in the car. Let's find the car. There's only other one place she could be. And he said that she would possibly be at her sister's apartment. So I continued to go over to her sister's apartment, and we pulled into the parking lot, and then, you know, he went over to the car, came back, they got into a verbal altercation, and he ended up shooting inside the apartment. And he ended up killing his baby mother's sister. And this woman, she worked at Mount Morris schools with children. And, you know, his children were in that apartment, and her children were in that apartment, and his baby mom's other kids were in that apartment. And, you know, she died on the way to the hospital, so I was charged as an accessory to murder, and I was charged with the guns that were in my safe, as well as tampering with evidence.
You free now. You're 22 then, you're 24 now. It didn't go that way.
Yes, sir.
It's you out here.
By the grace of God, you know, they gave me an option 8 days before trial. They told me I could take a lie detector test based on my part that I played in the case. They would give me a lie detector test based on what I did and what they believed I did or didn't do. And if I passed it, then they would allow me into the recovery court program.
Now, I think your dad told me something about you graduated, he graduated, he came back to the graduation.
So,
you came to the graduation, how did that go?
During my stay at the jail, I got enrolled into the Ignite program. And
Swanson.
I know that's right. And I'd only been in it for a short time, but a graduation came up, and all the ladies that are involved in the Ignite class get to go see the graduation, even if they're not graduating. So, you know, we all get in there, and we're sitting on the little top tier, and I'm nosy, and I don't get out of the pod very often, and, you know, I've been in jail for a while, and I know that there are guys graduating, too. So, I'm glancing around, I'm looking at all the guys, and then I noticed that silver head of hair, and I don't know what it was. I don't know if he, like, felt my presence or, like, what it was, but it was like as soon as I looked at the back of his head, he looked up and he looked right at me.
He probably felt it.
So, and that was the first time I had seen my dad in, I think, 10 months. And it was the first time I had ever seen him clean.
First time ever?
Ever.
Well, he did say he had a 40-year run, so.
I remember that, and I just started crying, and I was like, you know how, like, when you're a kid and you cry and you, like, simp, like you make the breathing noises and stuff. I started doing that. And the girls sitting next to me are like, what's wrong? Like, what's going on? And I was like, my dad is down there. And they're all like, oh, Carly. And they all thought it was so sweet. And I remember looking at them, and I could feel the vibration of life from all the way across the room.
I bet you could.
And I was so, so happy.
And then when you graduated, he was able to
I brought him back as my +1 when I graduated 4 months. I think it was 4 months. I think it's 4-month intervals between graduations. I brought him in as my +1. And Chris Swanson brought him up as like a guest speaker to share his story as a returning inmate of the Genesee County Jail.
Man.
And I got to give him a hug, and that was very amazing. And I got to say a couple of words, but I was so choked up I couldn't really speak. I was just so happy. And my dad was still clean, and I could not believe it.
Even when he came back?
Yes. He had been out of jail for, a couple of weeks, a month or so. And he was still clean, and I could see it in his face, and I just knew, like, this is really it. Like, oh my gosh. Just thinking about it now, I get so excited because I remember being in jail, and I kept praying to God, and I was like, please let me go home. Please let me go home. Like, I not only want to go home to my kids, but I want to go home to my dad.
So when you first seen him, you didn't know if he came back, if he'd be clean or not?
No, I just knew he had been in the jail for a little bit longer of a stay than what he usually does. So, I wasn't sure what would happen when he got out of jail, but I'm going to cry again. But when I talked to him when he finally got released, he said, I'm not going back out. He said, I'm not doing it. I can't do it no more. He said, I'm gonna stay clean. I promise. And he's never promised me to stay clean. He's never promised me nothing like that.
And he did.
And he did it. And he continues to do it every day.
Man, that's awesome.
And it is such an amazing experience, and I am so blessed to be able to experience it.
And now, just looking back, I remember a lot of stuff he told me. What you just said today, around 11, 12, you started using it close to him. You went through your ordeal for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And then a moment came, we are both in the county jail.
Mm-hmm.
And from that moment, from that day, you've been on the right path, and he done remained on it.
Mm-hmm.
Man.
I had I had renovations when I was in jail. I can't lie. I got
That's normal.
sober. I'm not going to say clean because I wasn't clean while I was in jail. I got sober because I had to. I got sober because my house was swatted out and I was taken into custody on very serious felony charges. So, I didn't want to stop drinking. I was belligerently drunk out of my mind when I was arrested, So I did have reservations while I was locked up. I did not know if I wanted to stay completely abstinent from all mind-altering substances while I was incarcerated. I was not sure of that. And due to those renovations, I relapsed when I came home. But today I know that I don't want any part of that feeling, that headspace, that lifestyle. I don't want anything to do with it, not only for myself, but for my kids. And I don't want to have anything to do with anyone that has anything to do with that life, because it's not good to me.
That's right. That's right, man. You keep growing up with attitude, you can probably run for president one day. I mean,
one day.
I'm telling you, the sky's the limit.
Mm-hmm.
You're 24.
Yep.
And you brighter than some people my age. I'm probably one of the people you're brighter than.
Oh, no.
But whatever you want to say to our listening audience, to your dad, whoever.
I just know that if you're a young woman struggling with addiction, you can overcome any obstacle in your life. And with the help of, God and a higher power, you can gather that strength and endure anything that you set your mind to, And it's baby steps. You don't have to do it all at once. A little bit of progress is better than no progress. One step forward is better than a step back. So all you have to do is just want it. You have to want that more than the life that you're living now. And if there's any young women struggling with addiction or struggling to get clean, I am open at all times, all hours of the day and night to communicate with you and share my experience, strength, and hope and how I got to where I'm at.
Man, I got one more question though, because your dad told me he go to church all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You do that too?
I sadly work every Sunday. I was going to church regularly when I first got out of jail, but due to my work schedule, they are very short-staffed on Sundays, and I have been obligated to work Sundays every week since I started working. But I have brought it to my higher-ups' attention that I need to start having Sundays off for my religious beliefs, and if they can't respect that, then I'm just not going to come in on Sundays. I don't know what to tell them. I don't know.
Hey, if Carl was my dad, I had him go talk to him. I said, go talk to him, Dad. So
No.
I get that day off.
My dad comes off strong to some people, very intimidating at times.
That's right, what they need. All right, Flint Town, American Recovery Community, we come to the conclusion of another show. I want to leave you with one true story, and it's based on the things this young lady said today. It don't matter where you at, how young you are, or how hard you go.
Mm-hmm.
In addiction, it don't matter. The only thing that matters is your desire to be sober.
Mm-hmm.
And if you true to it and trust the process and go through the process, you can experience what me, her, and her dad, and my cameraman experiencing now, and the young lady that's with Mr. Maddox. You can get it. And that's a true story from Coach D. Peace. See you next week.